Good afternoon. I hope you guys are well nourished. Again, my name's Michelle Evans. Pleasure to be here with you today, and it is my honor to introduce the next panel. We've got the Texas Comptroller candidate panel, Show Me the Money. First up is your moderator. When I started in politics, she was a state senator with the most fabulous boots in the building. We've got, now she has founded the Texan, Konni Burton. Next up, we've got Railroad Commissioner and actually Chairman, Christi Craddick. Comptroller Kelly Hancock. And last but not least, former State Senator Don Huffines. It's all you, Konni.
It's all mine, it's all you. Ooh. Hi, everyone. Thank y'all so much for being here. It's an honor for me to be here to moderate this panel. I am friends with each one of these distinguished guests today. So I've certainly known Senator Don Huffines, Senator Kelly Hancock now, Comptroller, and as well as Commissioner Christi Craddick. And so I'm honored to be here to visit with them and for us to tell them more about themselves and how they see themselves in this race. But first, they did allow me to introduce myself. I was a former state senator. I now own the Texan, which is a statewide political news organization. We are not, yes, I like you people. We are not a partisan media organization. We do what the media no longer does, and that is report the facts. We think you're big kids and you could read the facts and make up your own minds, and so that's why the Texan exists, and it's the Texan.news if you want to check us out later. So thank you for that, and let's get started. Okay, so the Texas Comptroller's office and position is a statewide office, obviously elected by voters statewide for a term of 4 years. Glenn Hager recently resigned as the Texas Comptroller to become the Chancellor of Texas A&M University. And Kelly Hancock, for a brief period, was hired as the chief clerk and then assumed the position as acting comptroller when Hager officially resigned to serve out the rest of the term ending in January of 2027. The Texas Comptroller's office serves virtually every citizen in the state as Texas's chief tax collector, accountant, revenue estimator, treasurer, and purchasing manager. The agency is responsible for writing the checks and keeping the books for the multi-billion-dollar expenses of state government. However, before we get into the candidates' knowledge of this position and agency, we'd like to ask all three candidates to take 1 to 2 minutes to introduce themselves and tell us about themselves personally and professionally. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Commissioner Christi Craddick.
Thank you, and thank you, Konni. It's nice to see you all this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time. Good afternoon, I'm Christi Craddick. I am right now the Railroad Commissioner, Chairman of the Railroad Commission. I've just rolled off. We rolled between 3 of us.
Yeah.
And I am a Christian, a mother, really important, a conservative, and a fighter for all of our values. I grew up in West Texas in a conservative family, and I've been a Republican since I was born. I think my parents would beat me up if I wasn't still one, by the way. And I went to my first state convention when I was 12. I don't think I've missed one since. This has been important in my family, and we continue to be conservative fighters for the state. I was elected and have been elected 3 times statewide to the Railroad Commission. I was just up on the ballot last cycle. We have a 6-year term at the Railroad Commission, so I just was reelected for my 3rd time. And while I've been there, it has been my honor and my privilege to be able to fight for an industry that is important to the state, but also make sure that I am looking at what ranchers and farmers do, the landowners, as well as making sure that we are fighting against federal government encroachment into this state, which has been a real challenge for us. And so I've been there for a while, and let me tell you, it has been a challenge to remember. Since I've been there, we had Obama, then we had Trump, then we had Biden, and now we're back to Trump. So Trump has been a great champion for this industry, and I appreciate that the oil and gas industry is championed by Trump, but I also know what happens or could happen if the next person's there. So you've got to have strong leadership and understanding of your job. And to that end, look, this industry has been important, not just to me, but to the entire state. It is a third of the state's economy. It is important for job growth, and that's a real key, and economic growth for the state. And so I've been, again, privileged to be there, and I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. I know it's time away from your families, time away from your jobs, but thank you for being here, being educated, number one, and two, going back and being the grassroots and explaining what we do, because a lot of people don't know, and three, being a fighter with all of us as we get into this next cycle. This is going to be another important cycle, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Senator Kelly Hancock.
Yeah, this is the part that I least like about politics. The reality is I'm just a sinner saved by grace that's only here by the grace of God, and the path throughout my life. A lot of things important. My wife is here, who I've known since kindergarten. I started dating in high school. Went to Baylor together, where, as Jonathan and I were talking about, our good friend, in fact, we were at their wedding, Kelly Shackford, who traces way back with Texas values. And we found out Jonathan and I actually started, I started in the legislature same time Jonathan started with Kelly and Shackford, Texas values. And so, but yeah, I don't know I'm here other than the grace of God and his goodness to someone who doesn't deserve it. The reality is, have a wonderful marriage. We adore each other. She's heading back to babysit some of our kids. We have 6 grandkids, a 7th one coming. I'm doing that. We have 3 kids. My youngest has only been married a couple of years, Harrison, so they've not started yet, so I'm sure we're going to keep moving in that direction. But shortly after we had our first child, I was diagnosed with a very, very rare kidney disease, a kidney disease that could put me on dialysis in literally 2 days, 2 months, 2 years. And God gave me 30 on doing that. And during that 30 years, truly a miracle of God, because the one that donated my kidney, think about this, was the best match of all 8 that tested, including family members, was my son-in-law. And so I'm really only 38.
Okay, that's a good one. Sorry. Politics aside, that was funny.
But I lived 30 years, never known when I'd wake up on a machine because of the illness and dialysis. And so, I stayed strong in my faith. I still am involved and lead a Bible study fellowship group that is around the world. I do it online. I'm doing that. So faith is incredibly important to me. And we've just trusted, our goal is not to be here, but to be wherever God wanted us to be. And so when I first was asked to run for the House after 13 years on the local school board, because we had a child, and guess what? We didn't have school choice. So I've been fighting for 30 years, but I ran for the school board because I wanted to make a difference, knowing I could not pick my school picked me. Spent 13 years there, was asked to run for the House, and when I was asked to run for the House, I literally walked in and Robin asked me, "What verse do you have?" And so I can't explain why. Most likely we were studying. I've been in Bible study fellowship for 27 years. We're probably studying something where the verse, the way God works, that we're probably studying the verse this week. But it's Ephesians 5:15 and 16. And it says that we're to be as the wise, not as the unwise, making the most of every opportunity, for the days are evil. And I think anybody involved in Texas Value understands that the days can be evil if believers do not act upon the opportunities that they're given. And so each step along my political career, when I was in the House, I was there for 6 terms, was asked to run the Republican Policy Committee, which is a very powerful committee. But then Governor Perry asked me if I would run against Wendy Davis. You remember her?
I happen to remember her.
Yeah. Well, if you remember what happened, the Supreme Court maps. So she drew 3 maps.
Right.
I was out of each of those maps. And so the Supreme Court moved me over into Senate District 9,
That's right.
where I ended up running and successfully ran there, was in the Senate for 13 years, which, you know, all three of us had very, very tight districts, and, you know, God allowed me success in that 1 year that was very, very difficult, and we were able to win that Senate district against our Democrat opponent because we all had tight districts. We defeated our Democrat opponent there, continued to operate. I was on finance for 10 years. I was on the Legislative Budget Board, appointed by Lieutenant Governor Patrick to the Legislative Budget Board. So very familiar with, you know, Comptroller's office and what they did over there. Huge proponent for education savings accounts. And so then again, you go back to Ephesians 5:15 and 16, making the most of opportunities. I wasn't looking or asking to move. I was fine where, I believe we're to be content wherever God has us. And so I was content, but God moved me over to the Comptroller's office at a really cool time, that someone that's been a proponent of school choice for 30 years, now I get to implement the program much like I did starting my own business from scratch with literally nothing, which is kind of what we've done with the education savings accounts and upgrade, you know, the office. And so we've just tried to follow where God has, with that verse kind of being the guiding principle. And so when I was asked to move over there and head the agency, I resigned, started the next day, and we're kind of off and running. So that's kind of where we're at. But I continue, like I said, I continue to lead a Bible study group and involved in that, because especially in politics, you've got to have that foundational where you're looking at Scripture each and every day to make sure that you're following the right path for you, and trusting Him to correct it if you're not on the right path. So we're continuing to try to follow His path as we take these next steps.
Thank you so much for that. Don Huffines, let's hear from you now.
Oh, thank you, Senator Burton. I appreciate it. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Don Huffines. I'm a fifth-generation Texan, and the foundation of my life is Jesus, family, and business, in that order. Been married 38 years to that beautiful woman, perfect wife right out there, Mary Catherine. I hope she never runs against me. I'm going to lose for sure.
Yeah, that's funny.
We have 4 boys and 1 daughter. They're all adults now. We homeschooled our children throughout their schooling career to make sure they could grow up in a solid, conservative Christian environment. Thank you. And they did. And that way it translates to the grandchildren, which, by the way, I've got 10 of, and 2 more on the way, and I'm putting the over and under at 20. So I'm taking the over. So it's a wonderful life that I've got. I got a finance degree in Austin, and business degree, and I got my real estate license there when I was there, and I started my business when I was in college, and I've never looked back. I just love real estate and what I do, but I've also been in a lot of other businesses, oil and gas, and many others. But I want to talk to you a minute also about Texas values while I'm introducing it, because it is part of my bio. And I'm going to tell you a quick story most of you probably don't know, because I don't tell it very often. But in 2010, I started thinking, laying in bed, thinking, looking up at the ceiling, you know, is that we have got to get Jesus in our nation's capital. We just don't have it. What can I do to do that? So I thought about it, and I said, let's get a Christian radio station going in the nation's capital. So I did this all alone. I put $4.5 million of my own money, went through all the process to find a station for sale. I bought the largest AM radio station in Washington, D.C., specifically so I could change the format of that station to have 24 hours of Jesus communicating. We know there's a lot of demons in Washington. But I wanted to screw them out of there, you know, put Jesus on the air, so I did that. And that station's still on the air today, broadcasting the Lord's message. So I've been fighting for Texas values for a long time. That's just one quick story on that. And another thing I want to talk to you just a quick minute about that I'm proud of, and when I was in the Senate, there's a lot of things I got done there that I'm very proud of. I was always ranked one of the most conservative, top 2 or 3. I was trying to beat Konni over here. She beat me a couple of times. Did you? I think you made me more than 2. Yeah, she did, but not all the time. But anyway, is that when I got elected there, it was like, I worked really hard never to take a dollar from the government. I'm the only elected office holder, according to Patsy Spa, and we know who that is, that in the history of the state of Texas, it never took a penny from the government. No pay, no pension, no per diem, no health care, no reimbursements, no travel vouchers. Thank you. I even bought my own office furniture, and I didn't take their parking place. I didn't do anything for them because I don't work for the government. The government didn't hire me. I work for the people. I work for you, the taxpayer. And I'm going to do the same as your comptroller. I'm never going to take any money from the government, no pay, no pension, no nothing. And I mean that. It's because I'm going to be your champion, the taxpayer champion. And this is going to change the culture of Austin, and I think the halo effect will change the culture of our local governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. That's awesome. Now that we know a little bit about each candidate, please each tell us what you know about the Texas Comptroller's office and why you are running for this position. And I'm going to go backwards this time, and I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Thank you, Connie. Well, I'm running for this office because I have a passion for Texas, our heritage, our values, our Texas values, what you guys are here for. I really do have a passion for it. And I want to bring President Trump's sense of urgency to Austin, to Doge, Texas, and be a taxpayer champion. And look, I tell you, Texas really needs Doging. As you probably know, that we're spending over, how much y'all think we spend every single day in Texas? Every single day, all funds considered, over $500 million. Over $500 million what Texas spends 7 days a week, $350,000 every minute of every day. And all that goes through the comptroller's office. You get eyes and ears on every bit of that. As I'm sure folks here will tell you that, the comptroller's office has tentacles everywhere in the state of Texas. It affects everyone. It encompasses so much. It's really hard to explain it and to go over it. I'm sure they will do that. But I want to tell you how important it is to Doge the state of Texas. Let me just tell you a quick story on that. When I was in the Texas Senate, and I got my property tax bill out in Dallas County. I represented the north half of Dallas County. And at the bottom of that bill, it said Dallas Equal Fund. And I said, what in the world is that? What is Dallas Equal Fund? And I asked the questions, nobody knew, and I kept asking, and turned out it was Dallas County Schools, not Dallas Independent School District, and they had a countywide tax, they had a countywide board, and they were spending way over $100 million a year, and almost 3,000 employees, and I started asking a lot of questions. What do they do? Why do you do it? I tried to get a forensic audit done, and so for over 2 years I worked on this, really almost 2.5 years, and when I was in the Senate meeting with different people and coming up with different ideas, different answers to my questions, so I got the Texas Rangers involved. And then we got the Dallas County DA had the file, and then we gave it to the FBI. And the main help I had was investigative reporters in Dallas, Texas, NBC5. And they would do all the legwork and the research, and they'd hug me every time I came over there and gave them more information. They knew they were going to win a prize. But anyway, 6 people went to prison over this deal. 6 people, including the mayor pro tem of the city council of Dallas, got 7 years. And I'm telling you that story because it was a lot of work and I did it alone. That was one agency, and they closed them down, by the way. They don't exist anymore, and that was the largest takedown of a government agency in modern Texas history. I was Doging before Doging was cool, and I say that. I was Doging. And I'm the only person that in Texas that can say that because this is a fact. And that was one agency. That agency spent in 1 year what the state of Texas spends in 9 hours. 9 hours. We have over 200 agencies in the state of Texas. We have 3,000 people in the comptroller's office. The comptroller's responsible for so much. Way over 100,000 credit cards, 9 payroll systems, and I'm sure they're going to tell you about what else they're responsible for. But I'm running to change the narrative of Texas. I'm running to not focus on the revenue side. I'm running to focus on the spending side. Just ask the question, where's our money going? Really, what are we spending it on? Does anybody really understand the budget? Most people in the legislature don't understand the budget. We listen to LBB and they come back and tell you something. I'll just tell you this. Who runs the state of Texas? Who runs it? It's the bureaucrats. That's who runs Texas. The same thing that runs Washington, D.C. Trump showed us that. He showed us where the swamp was, and now this session, he's draining it. Oh, wait a minute. I know she doesn't like Trump, but that's okay. I love Trump. I think he's such a warrior. Okay, I'll be quiet. I quit preaching. Mary Catherine's supposed to stop me from preaching. But that's what I'm going to do, is doge Texas.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much. All right, Kelly. So how is your time, what have you seen and learned in your current time as a Texas Comptroller that prepares you to be elected by the voters?
A lot more than I knew when I got there. And I knew, 10 years on finance, 5 on legislative budget board. I had a good idea of what we were going into, and good friends with Glenn Hager, but we've learned a lot, and we've changed a lot since we've got in there. We audit every single agency. We do that each and every year. Working with the governor's office, where we actually have the Doge Committee, that's for reasons, for legislative and constitutional reasons. The Doge Committee is actually, it's not in the Comptroller's office, it's over in the governor's office, and working with him on establishing that committee, who's going to participate in that, who's going to be involved. Because we do want to do things like get rid of Dallas County schools, which you didn't do it totally alone. I'm actually the one that passed the legislation to actually shut them down, if you'll remember, when it comes to Dallas County schools. We had to pass legislation to take it to the voters, and the voters shut it down. So I was happy to carry Senate Bill 2068 on that. But we've been traveling the state as well. I've been in multiple places. We do a lot of, the main thing we do is revenue estimates, and it's good to get that very close. During special session, you heard about $3 billion. People think that's a lot of money. It's less than a 1% variance in our revenue estimates and the money that was spent. And I am very fiscally conservative. As you know, it took me 10 years to pass the tightest spending limit in the nation, population and inflation. I carried that year after year along with pretty much every other Republican until we passed that, because you do control spending up front, which I've been proud to be a part of that. So the agency, we've done a lot of things. The main thing we're focused on right now, broadband, which is communication equipment, that last mile, we oversee that. The opioid settlement that comes out of the Attorney General's office, we oversee that to make sure those funds are coming in appropriately. All the RFPs, all their purchases are in our office. In fact, just the other day, I got a request to sign off on $4.5 billion for a mainframe. Well, I said, mainframe, we're updating here. In fact, we're just installing a new financial system across the state to make us more transparent, more efficient in the office, and I refused to sign off on and the answer was, well, it's already approved. And so we're getting a briefing on that, but right now, and that's why we do it, to kind of catch those things. And the business background I have certainly helps in that vein. The main thing we're focused on right now, because we're on a short timeline, and my entrepreneurial background kind of helps with education savings account, because we got to get those up and running by the first of the year, so our private schools and our homeschoolers kind of know what they're dealing with from a financial standpoint. And so we're in the process now of establishing the mechanics side of it. How's it going to be implemented? What basically computer system, software system we're going to implement? Who's going to head the organization and run that? But we've got to get that all up and running by the first of the year. And one of the first things I told them, or I asked them to do, is, all right, we need to do these things simultaneously. And I was told, we can't do this till we do that. Anybody that runs a business, especially when you're starting out from scratch and have no revenue coming in, you have to learn to multitask. And so we are multitasking. They learn that they can do 2 things at one time. They can do multiple things at one time. And it is a very, very good staff. So we've got that going. We're on pace. Every Tuesday morning, they give me updates on that so that we stay on track. We are meeting that timeline, but we can't operate as government in order to get that ready by the first of the year. And we really didn't know we were doing it for sure until after the legislation passed. So we're moving at business speed in order to get that going, along with all the other things that are going on in our office. With 3,000 employees, 25 offices, 4 out of state. I've visited 8 of those offices already, just laying out. And one of the things I literally on the way here that we're implementing that's kind of new, that every business, every major business does, is they chart their, and graph their performance and their goals and objectives. So we are launching here soon, I saw it today, so it'll be coming out soon, a regional data chart where you're going to be able to go on our website, you're going to be able to look up your regional information that tells you how we're performing as a state. It shouldn't just be traveling the state telling you about it, but you're going to be able to actually go on and see how we're doing and how we're doing as an office, where we're charting and graphing our performance. And that's one of the things that the staff learned very quickly within my first few days is I like the numbers, and I want to see how we're performing, how quickly we're moving. And one of the first things I saw was we got to have updated computer system in order to get that done. So a lot of fun stuff going on. It's a ton of work. I like it way more than I should.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I want to stick around 4 more years after we finish out this duty that I was asked to do and enjoy doing.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Christi Craddick, how does your experience serving on the Texas Railroad Commission prepare you to be the next Texas Comptroller?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Look, the Texas Comptroller, as you've heard, touches everything financial in the entire state, and that's really important. But it's not just about accounting. It's not just in and out. It's also, very importantly, the Texas economic future, and ensuring fiscal responsibility and serving, frankly, as a check and balance, not just for the legislature, but for local government. And so at the Railroad Commission, I walked in the door and we had some challenges at my agency. I took over the budget. I didn't know I was going to take over the budget. I've been running our budget at our agency for the last 13 years. We have to go, and we are fee-based as an agency. What does that mean? That means that industry, the oil and gas industry, pays for my agency to operate. Well, do you think we want to raise fees on an industry that is bringing in jobs and is paying a lot of taxes? No. So we've worked really hard to have a lean, mean budget at our agency. I think that translates to what you do for every other taxpayer at the Comptroller's office. We need to know where our dollars are going. And you need to be smart. Look, it's your dollars. It's my dollars. And the way I look at this, I run my own household. You need to make sure, as the Comptroller, that you're running this state's budget like you run your household. We don't need to overspend. We need to know where all the money is going. We need to be more efficient, more transparent. So a couple things we did when I got to the Railroad Commission, and I'm glad Kelly's already started, but I've been talking about upgrading IT for years. We're one of those on a mainframe Fortran when I got to this agency. If you don't know what that was, go talk to somebody, because somebody in this room's gonna know. Why was that important? Because we weren't efficient, and we sure weren't transparent. We're in the last cycle of updating our IT at our agency at the Railroad Commission, and we're going cloud. And we've been on time and on budget. What has that allowed us to do, though? We're now more efficient. When I got there, it took us 90 days to get a drilling permit out. Today, we can do it in 2 days. This is how government ought to work for people. And this is what we've done at the Railroad Commission. I've got the experience. We're not making it up and figuring it out on the fly. I know how to run an agency. And I've been elected 3 times to run this agency. So that's how I think I've got great experience. Look, in a state with no income tax, thankfully, and we've got sales tax. Every single dollar needs to be accounted for at all levels of government. And that's where I think I bring the experience to know how to work in an agency, to know how to work with the legislature. We're all sitting up here. We've all worked with the legislature, but understanding that process and knowing that it's not just what happens in Austin, by the way, it's what's happening in your local communities as well. And that's important for you as a voter to understand what's going on at all levels of government. And I look forward to bringing that experience to this office.
Thank you. Running a tight ship here because we've got about 5 more minutes. So in 2022, and bear with me, this is kind of a little bit lengthy here, preface to the question. In 2022, there was an incident that the Texas Comptroller's office was investigating regarding a drag queen show in the Dallas area where children were encouraged to attend and were present. The result was Comptroller Glenn Hager concluded that current law for sexually oriented businesses limited his ability to crack down on these types of events. In a statement, Glenn Hager said, quote, Unfortunately, while the text of the current statute might appear to give me an avenue to designate these as sexually oriented businesses, the reality is more complex. Texas's sexually oriented businesses laws have been significantly watered down by the courts over the last decade. This is exactly why Texas laws need to be updated and strengthened. Losing this fight is not an option, and I will not allow activist courts to further undermine Texas values by engaging in a legal battle without having the proper statutory support needed to win that battle. My office, and this is again Hager who was saying this, will continue to investigate these performances to find violations of current law. But to win long term, I am committed to work with conservative legislators to update state law in the coming session to give my office the authority needed to protect Texas values and Texas children, end quote. So designating this business and others like that hold drag queen shows as sexually oriented businesses, would force these businesses to pay a fee to the state and would prevent children from being allowed to attend. So just quickly, if we could just do a one word answer. Do you approve of so-called drag queen shows where children are allowed and encouraged to attend? Ms. Craddick.
Absolutely not.
Well, I've voted with Texas values more than any. Well, I'm the only one that's voted with Texas values on this issue specifically. And if ACO wants to sue the state for not allowing my grandkids to go to events like this, bring it.
Of course not. Look, I closed down a website that was on Department of Family and Protective Services that was promoting transgenderism, the homosexual agenda. I wasn't even in office when I did that. And I can tell you, I'm going to fight for Texas values every chance I get.
Perfect. And question 2, in regard to drag queen shows, is there anything you would have handled differently than how this issue was handled in 2022? And will you make the same commitment to investigate these types of issues and work closely with the Texas legislature to change any laws to give the Comptroller's office greater enforcement authority? And I'm going to be a bully and make y'all stop talking because we only have a few minutes. So we'll start with you, Kelly. Do you want the question again? Is there anything you would have handled differently than how this was handled in 2022? And will you make the same commitment to investigate these types of issues?
Yeah, well, I'm dealing with issues now where I've already told the staff, if we're going to get sued by somebody, let us get sued by ACLU. And so, yes, if it takes the courts, and even losing in court, forcing the legislature to actually pass a piece of this legislation, then let's go to court and let's force the legislature to make the right move. Although I've voted with them time and time again on this issue to ban these organizations. Let's go to court. Let's see what happens.
Thank you. Don.
Well, thank you for the question, Connie. Look, I've been a champion for Texas values. I've already said that forever, and that's why I have so many endorsements. I mean, I've got endorsements from the 75% of the SREC, Riley Gaines on this issue. Thank you. Ted Cruz on this. Ted Cruz has endorsed the campaign. I got so many, I'm going to pull out my cheat sheet.
Quickly.
Okay, Kevin Roberts, the Heritage Foundation, Genevieve Collins, State Director for AFP, Texas Right to Life, Texas Family Project, Homeschool Coalition, Texas Eagle Forum, Moms for America, 75% of the SREC. And I just got to say this because it's really heavy on my heart, and I know it's on everybody's heart, is our hero, Charlie Kirk. I mean, rest in peace, Charlie. But Charlie was passionate that I win this race because he knew how important it was, not just for Texas and Texas values for 30 million people, but he knew how me winning this race and being in this position was going to affect the nation. And he knew that I'm the MAGA candidate that's going to win. And that's why he was passionate for me to win.
Thank you. Thank you. Christi.
So I would say, look, I have a teenage daughter. Y'all pray for me every single day, by the way. But absolutely, we're going to continue to investigate. I'm happy to sue people, and we do that as an agency. We make sure that we do the right thing, but I don't think you wait for the legislature. I think you tell them what you need. And I think you're more proactive in when we need some help. If you need, as an agency, something needs to change, you go to the legislature and tell them you've got a problem, and not wait for them. If it means to go to court, fine, but you've got to be proactive as an agency and ask for what you need to change. And so I think that's what I would do different, and I would have done it a lot quicker than what went on.
Thank you. Listen, we've got some fantastic candidates for this race, and I'm so glad y'all are here kind of getting to know them. I know there'll be a lot more news coming out, a lot more debates and things, but please pay attention. Get your friends and neighbors to pay attention. These are great candidates, and we hope to see you at the polls. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Konni. Thank you, Texas Values.